Ethan Cole lived in a small apartment on the 23rd floor of a tall tower in Neo-London. The city was bright, noisy, and always moving. Cars without drivers flew through the airways. Neon signs blinked from one building to another, and the hum of machines never really stopped. Ethan's apartment, however, was the complete opposite. It was messy, small, and smelled faintly of instant noodles. Dirty clothes piled in one corner. Empty cups lined the desk, and a flickering screen showed his long list of unpaid bills. He was 25 years old, worked long hours at a repair shop, and spent most of his evenings eating cheap food and scrolling through endless advertisements. One evening, as he sat on his old couch, he saw a glowing ad appear on the wall screen. Tired of cleaning? Tired of cooking? Need company? Introducing the latest household helper, Maid Bot X3000. Beautiful design, perfect skills, and 100% loyalty. Available now with easy installments. The video showed a sleek robot maid dressed neatly, cooking meals, folding laundry, and smiling with artificial charm. Ethan sighed. He had been thinking about buying something like this for months. He was tired of living in a place that looked more like a junkyard than a home. This is it, he muttered to himself. No more dirty dishes. No more dust, maybe. Life will feel a little better. He pressed the button on the ad, and within minutes he was filling out a purchase form. The price was high, but the company allowed monthly payments. Ethan convinced himself it was worth it. After all, this wasn't just a machine, it was freedom from chores and maybe even loneliness. When the confirmation appeared on his screen, Ethan leaned back, a small smile on his face. Finally. Tomorrow, things will change. The delivery. The next evening, Ethan rushed home early from work. For once, he felt excited. A message had arrived on his phone. Your MaidBot X3000 has been delivered. Please confirm receipt. He nearly ran down the hallway to his apartment door, where a tall metal capsule was standing upright. It looked expensive, with a glowing company logo at the top. Ethan's heart beat faster. This was it. His life was about to become easier. He pushed the capsule inside, locked the door behind him, and stood before it. The capsule hissed softly, as if waiting for him to press the activation button. He rubbed his hands together nervously. All right, MaidBot X3000, let's meet. He pressed the button. The capsule hissed louder, steam escaping from the sides. Lights blinked and the front panel slowly opened with a click. Ethan leaned forward eagerly, expecting to see shiny metal, polished arms, and glowing eyes. But what stepped out was not a robot. It was a girl, the strange girl. She stumbled forward, falling slightly against Ethan's chest. He quickly caught her, his eyes wide in shock. She wasn't made of steel. She wasn't wearing polished armor. She was human-looking. Her skin was pale, almost glowing under the dim light of his apartment. Her hair was long and silver, falling softly around her shoulders. Her eyes, bright violet, blinked at him with confusion. She wore a strange suit, thin and flexible, with glowing patterns across the fabric. For a moment, Ethan froze. His mind refused to understand what he was seeing. What the? This isn't... You're not a robot. The girl looked around the messy apartment, then back at him. She tried to speak, but the words came out broken and strange. Where is this? Ethan's heart raced. He stepped back, staring at her. Wait, you're real? A person? No, this must be some kind of mistake. I ordered a robot maid. The girl tilted her head, confusion in her violet eyes. She touched her chest gently. Not machine, I am... Lyra! The name sounded soft, almost like music. Ethan blinked, trying to process. Lyra, you... No, this doesn't make sense. I paid for a robot maid, not... He stopped, lowering his voice to a whisper. Not an alien girl, because that's what she looked like. Not quite human. Too perfect, too strange, too otherworldly. Panic and questions, Ethan ran his hands through his hair, pacing back and forth. Okay. Calm down, Ethan. Think, maybe this is some kind of new model. A robot that just looks real. Yeah, maybe. He turned back to her quickly. You're a robot, right? Say you're a robot maid. Lyra shook her head slowly, her silver hair catching the light. Not robot. Not maid, Ethan groaned. Great, just great. I ordered a cleaning machine and I get... He stopped, waving his hands. Whatever you are. Lyra looked at him, her expression calm but curious. You human? The way she said it sent a chill down his spine. Yes, I'm human, And you... He pointed at her, his voice dropping to a whisper again. You're not. She blinked again, then looked down at her glowing suit. I lost. Wrong place. Her voice trembled as if she was afraid. Ethan felt his anger slip away, replaced with something else. Sympathy. Whoever she was, she didn't look dangerous. She looked scared. He sighed heavily, rubbing his forehead. All right, fine. Maybe I'm dreaming. Or maybe this is some kind of prank. But if you're real, then... He glanced at the capsule.
How did you even get in there?
Lyra looked at the capsule too, her eyes narrowing as if in pain. Prison, trade, mistake. Her words were broken, but Ethan understood enough to feel uneasy. The decision. For a long moment, silence filled the apartment. Outside, the city hummed with neon lights and flying cars. Inside, Ethan stood facing a girl who should not exist. He had two choices: call the company and report this, or keep her secret. Logic told him to make the call. If the authorities found out he was hiding an alien, or whatever she was, he could be arrested, maybe worse. But as he looked at her again, he saw the fear in her eyes. She wasn't a threat. She was lost, confused, and maybe even in danger. He let out a slow breath. All right. Lyra, was it? I don't know how you ended up here, but I guess you can stay. Just for now. Until I figure this out. Lyra's lips curved into the smallest smile, as if his words gave her relief. Thank you. Ethan nodded, though he still felt like his whole life had just flipped upside down. He wanted a robot maid. Instead, he had a guest from another world sitting in his living room. And deep down, he knew this was only the beginning. Closing scene of part 1 that night. Ethan lay awake on his couch, staring at the ceiling. Across the room, Lyra slept lightly, her silver hair shining faintly in the dim light. The capsule still stood by the door, silent and empty. Ethan whispered to himself, "What did I just get myself into?" He didn't know the answer. But one thing was certain. His life was no longer ordinary. What he thought would be a simple purchase had turned into something extraordinary. And while he couldn't explain why, a part of him felt glad. Morning sunlight slipped through the half-broken blinds of Ethan's apartment. Dust floated lazily in the air, landing on the cluttered furniture. Ethan sat at the edge of his couch holding a cup of instant coffee, staring at the figure still resting on the floor across the room. Lyra. She had curled up on a blanket he had reluctantly given her, her silver hair shimmering faintly even in the dull light. She looked so peaceful, almost like a normal girl. Almost, but her glowing suit, her unusual eyes, and the strange capsule by the door reminded Ethan that this was no dream. He rubbed his eyes, muttering to himself, I buy a robot maid and instead I get a guest from another world. How does this even happen? As if sensing his voice, Lyra stirred. Slowly, her violet eyes opened and she looked around. For a moment there was fear in her gaze, but when she saw Ethan, she relaxed. You still here? She said softly, her words clumsy but clearer than last night. Ethan forced a small smile. Yeah, still here. And you're still not a robot. Lyra tilted her head, not understanding the joke, but she gave a faint nod. Breakfast and questions. Ethan stood up, deciding that maybe food would make things less strange. He opened his cupboard, searching through instant meals and cans. Do you eat normal food? Or do you need, like, alien fuel or something? He asked. Lyra blinked at him, then pointed at the steaming cup in his hand. Drink. This? Coffee? Ethan raised a brow. Pretty strong stuff. Maybe not a good first choice. He finally boiled some water and made instant soup, handing it carefully to her. Lyra sniffed it curiously, then tasted a small spoonful. Her eyes widened slightly. Warm? Good. Ethan chuckled. Well, at least food is simple. One problem solved. But as she ate slowly, Ethan's mind filled with questions. He had spent the whole night thinking about what to do. He couldn't just ignore the situation. She wasn't a robot. She wasn't from Earth. He sat across from her, leaning forward. Okay, Lyra, I need answers. Who are you? Where are you from? And why did you show up in my delivery capsule? Lyra paused, her spoon trembling slightly. For a moment, she looked down as if deciding whether to speak. Then, in a quiet voice, she said, From far. Not this world. Not this sky. Ethan swallowed hard. He had expected it, but hearing it out loud sent chills down his spine. So, You're really an alien. She nodded slowly. Pieces of the truth. Lyra closed her eyes as if searching for words. Her speech was broken, but Ethan listened carefully. My people. Watch stars. Long time, we travel. Many places, but some, not kind, they capture, trade. Her voice shook slightly. I was taken. Ethan's brows furrowed. Taken? You mean kidnapped? Yes. She pointed weakly toward the capsule. That prison, I escaped, but mistake, wrong path. And here, Ethan sat back, stunned. He had expected a weird explanation, but this sounded even worse. She wasn't just lost, she had been running from something dangerous. Hold on, he said slowly. You're telling me you were captured by aliens? Other aliens? Lyra nodded again. Hunters, cruel. Her eyes darkened, filled with fear. Ethan rubbed his forehead. This was too much for his brain to process. Yesterday, his biggest worry was dirty laundry. Now he was hiding a runaway alien girl from hunters in his tiny apartment. Unbelievable, he muttered. Completely unbelievable. But when he looked at Lyra again, her eyes told him it was all real. Abilities revealed later that day. While Ethan tried to clean up his messy living room, he noticed Lyra staring at his broken lamp. The lamp had been dead for months. Ethan never bothered fixing it. Lyra reached out her hand toward it. Her fingertips glowed faintly and the lamp flickered to life, brighter than before. Ethan froze, holding a pile of clothes. What did you just do? Lyra looked at him almost shyly. Fix. You fixed it? Just like that? She nodded, her silver hair falling softly around her shoulders. I touch. Energy flows. Machines, listen. Ethan dropped the clothes, stepping closer. You can control machines? Not control, she corrected gently. Understand. Heal. Ethan's jaw tightened. If what she said was true, then her abilities were beyond anything humans had. She wasn't just lost, she was powerful. To test it, he brought her his old wrist communicator, which hadn't worked in years. Lyra touched it, and within seconds the device lit up, good as new. Ethan whistled. Okay, that's amazing, Lyra gave a small smile. Small gift. From my people. Ethan scratched the back of his neck. So you're not just some runaway, you're special. But even as he said it, he noticed the sadness in her eyes. Conflict within. That night, Ethan sat alone on the couch after Lyra had fallen asleep again. His mind was restless. Should he report her? If the government or the corporation found out about her, maybe they would protect her. Or maybe they would lock her away, study her, or worse. He looked at her sleeping form. She looked so fragile, curled up with the blanket. She didn't seem dangerous. She didn't seem like a threat. Ethan sighed. Why me? Out of all people on this planet, why did you end up here? He thought back to the way she smiled when she fixed the lamp, or the way her voice trembled when she mentioned hunters. She wasn't lying. She was just trying to survive. Deep down, Ethan already knew the answer. He couldn't hand her over. He couldn't betray the trust she had started to show him. Building trust over the next few days, Lyra learned quickly. Her broken English improved as Ethan patiently explained words and meanings. She repeated them, sometimes with mistakes, but always eager to learn. Cup, Ethan said, pointing. Cup, she repeated. Window. Win-dow, he chuckled. Close enough. She smiled shyly, and Ethan felt a strange warmth in his chest. It had been a long time since he had real company. In return, Lyra showed him small glimpses of her abilities. She repaired his broken fan, his cracked tablet, and even managed to boost his weak internet connection just by touching the router. Ethan half joked that she was better than any robot maid. But each time she used her gift, she grew quiet, as if remembering something painful. Ethan didn't push her. He knew there was more to her story, but trust was growing slowly, and he didn't want to break it. The promise one evening. As the city lights flickered outside the window, Lyra sat beside Ethan, her eyes distant. My people, she whispered, they not trust humans. Say weak. Say not ready. Ethan frowned. Not ready for what? Lyra hesitated, then looked at him directly. For stars, for greater world. Ethan's chest tightened. So her people had been watching, judging, and they thought humans weren't worth joining the galaxy. He clenched his fists. Well, they're wrong. We may not have all your powers, but humans aren't weak. Lyra tilted her head. Why you believe? Because history shows it. We survive. We fight. We build. We dream. That's what makes us human. His voice was firm, almost protective. Lyra's lips curved into a small smile. Maybe they wrong, maybe. You right. In that moment, Ethan realized something. Lyra wasn't just a lost alien. She was a bridge, a chance for humans to prove themselves. And she had chosen to trust him. He nodded firmly. Don't worry, Lyra. Whatever's chasing you, whatever your people think of us, I'll help you. You're safe here. For the first time, Lyra's eyes shone not with fear, but with hope. Closing scene of Part 2A's. Ethan switched off the lights. He looked once more at Lyra, who now slept peacefully on the couch beside him. The city outside buzzed with neon life, unaware that inside a small apartment, the first fragile bond between a human and an alien was being formed. Ethan whispered to himself, I wanted a robot maid, but maybe what I really needed was this. And deep down, he knew. His life was no longer just his own. The secret he now carried would soon change everything. The days passed quietly at first. Ethan almost convinced himself that maybe life could go back to normal. He went to work at the repair shop, came home in the evening, and shared meals with Lyra. She was learning English faster than he had expected, and she even started helping him cook simple meals. For the first time in years, Ethan's apartment didn't feel empty. The broken lamp now shone bright. The fan hummed smoothly, and the once lonely silence was replaced with quiet conversations. But peace never lasts. Strange shadows one evening. As Ethan walked back from work through the crowded neon streets, he noticed something strange. A tall figure stood at the corner scanning the crowd with a device that glowed faintly. The figure wore a long coat, but its movements were stiff, mechanical. Ethan slowed his steps. His instincts told him something was wrong. The figure raised its head, and for a brief second, glowing red eyes met Ethan's. He quickly turned away, heart racing, and hurried into his apartment tower. When he reached his room, he locked the door and leaned against it, trying to calm down. Lyra looked up from the couch, where she had been studying words on his tablet. Ethan, you look pale. He swallowed hard. I saw someone, not normal. He was scanning people, and his eyes. He hesitated, then whispered. They weren't human. Lyra froze, the color draining from her face. Hunters, she said softly. Fear in her eyes, Ethan sat beside her, gripping his knees. Hunters? You mean the ones who captured you? Lyra nodded slowly, her violet eyes trembling with fear. Yes, they follow. They search, always. They never stop. Ethan's stomach turned. And now they're here, in this city. Lyra lowered her gaze. They can track. My suit. Signal. I try hide, but not forever. Ethan clenched his fists. So they're after you, which means they'll come here. Lyra whispered, almost too softly to hear. If they find, they take me. And maybe you too. The room grew heavy with silence. Ethan had feared this moment, but now it was real. He wasn't just protecting a secret. He was standing in the middle of a hunt. Ethan's choice that night, Ethan barely slept. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing. He could run. He could leave Lyra and save himself. She wasn't even from this world. None of this was his problem. But each time the thought crossed his mind, he remembered her eyes. Those violet eyes filled with fear, yet also trust. She had no one else. Ethan sat up suddenly, whispering to himself, No, I'm not leaving her. If they want her, they'll have to get through me first. The decision felt heavy, but it also gave him strength. Humans had always survived by refusing to give up, and he would be no different. First signs of danger. The next day, Ethan noticed more strange figures in the city. Two stood near the metro station, scanning passers-by. Another sat in a cafe, not drinking, only watching. Their glowing eyes were always hidden behind glasses or hoods, but Ethan noticed the mechanical stiffness in their movements. When he returned home, he double-checked the locks, then pulled Lyra aside. They're closing in, he said firmly. We need to be ready. Lyra's hands trembled slightly. They... stronger than you think. Machines and... not machines. Ethan gave a humorless laugh. Yeah, well, humans are good at one thing. Surviving. We'll outsmart them. The plan to hide over the following days, Ethan prepared. He remembered stories his grandfather told him about the old wars, how soldiers used tricks, disguises, and decoys to survive against stronger enemies. He started small. He bought extra clothing and disguised Lyra as a normal girl, hiding her silver hair under a hat. When they went out to buy food, she walked beside him quietly, blending into the crowd. At home, Ethan built makeshift shields around the windows using scraps of metal from the shop. He even reprogrammed his old wrist communicator to send out fake signals, hoping to confuse the hunter's scanners. Lyra watched him work, her eyes filled with both worry and admiration. Why, help me. Hunter's dangerous. You could run. Ethan paused, meeting her gaze. Because humans don't abandon people who trust them. That's what makes us strong. For the first time in days, Lyra smiled softly. The chase, but the hunters were not easily fooled. One evening, as Ethan and Lyra returned from the market, he noticed two figures following them closely. His chest tightened. Keep walking, he whispered to Lyra. Don't look back. They turned into a side street, then another. The glowing red eyes behind them didn't waver. The hunters had found their trail. Ethan's mind raced. He spotted an old maintenance tunnel ahead, half broken and dark. This way! He hissed, grabbing Lyra's hand. They dashed inside just as the hunters quickened their pace. The tunnel echoed with their footsteps. Ethan's heart pounded. He pulled Lyra behind an old machine, holding his breath. The hunters' voices echoed through the tunnel, metallic and cold. Target detected. Energy trail confirmed. Lyra squeezed Ethan's hand, fear clear in her eyes. Ethan whispered, Stay quiet. Trust me. The hunters' scanning beams swept across the tunnel, passing dangerously close. But Ethan had already activated his reprogrammed communicator, sending out false energy signals deeper into the tunnels. The hunters turned, following the fake trail. Ethan exhaled slowly, relief flooding through him. That's right. Follow the wrong trail. Lyra looked at him with awe. You tricked them. Ethan grinned weakly. Sometimes brains beat strength. Growing tension back in the apartment, Lyra sat quietly, still shaken from the chase. They had not stopped. They will come again. Ethan nodded grimly. I know. But each time they come, we'll be ready. Humans are stubborn like that. He looked at her firmly. As long as you're here, I'll protect you. That's a promise. Lyra's eyes softened. I believe you. But even as she said it, Ethan knew things were only getting more dangerous. The hunter's strategy, the next morning, strange reports spread through the city. People whispered about missing neighbors, unexplained power cuts, and silent figures wandering at night. Ethan read the news on his screen, his jaw tightening. The hunters weren't just searching quietly anymore. They were spreading fear. He turned to Lyra. They're trying to flush you out. They want you scared enough to make a mistake. Lyra's hands shook slightly. They always win. Always find. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. Not this time. Not with me here. For a moment, silence passed between them. Then Lyra whispered, Humans. Different. You fight. Even when weak. Ethan smiled faintly. That's what makes us dangerous. Closing scene of part 3. That night, as the city lights flickered outside, Ethan stood by the window, watching the streets below. He could see them, hunters moving like shadows, always searching. Behind him, Lyra sat quietly, her violet eyes glowing faintly in the dark. She whispered his name softly. Ethan. Thank you. He turned to her, determination burning in his chest. Don't thank me yet. This is only the beginning. Outside, the hunters grew closer. The game of survival had truly begun. And Ethan knew one thing for certain. If they thought humans were weak, they were about to learn how wrong they were. The city was no longer safe. Ethan could feel it in the air. The streets were quieter than before, people walking with nervous eyes. Strange figures, always tall, always watching, were seen in corners, rooftops, and alleyways. The hunters were tightening their net. Ethan kept Lyra hidden most of the time. But even inside the apartment, tension never left. Every hum of a drone outside, every flicker of the lights made his heart pound. Lyra rarely spoke now. She sat by the window often, staring at the sky, as if longing for freedom she couldn't reach. Ethan hated it. She didn't deserve to live in fear. The warning one night, Ethan returned from work later than usual. As he climbed the stairs to his apartment, he noticed the hallway lights flickering. His gut tightened. Something was wrong. He unlocked his door quickly and stepped inside. Lyra was already standing, her eyes glowing faintly, her body tense. "Ethan," she whispered. "They near?" "Very near." Ethan shut the door, his pulse racing. "How do you know?" Lyra pointed to the capsule by the corner, the same one she had arrived in. Its surface glowed faintly, responding to some hidden signal. "They call." Capsule still linked. Ethan cursed under his breath. He should have destroyed that thing weeks ago. Before he could answer, a loud crash echoed from below. The building shook. Shouts and screams followed. "They're here," Ethan said grimly. The confrontation begins moments later. The apartment door rattled violently. Ethan pulled Lyra behind him, grabbing the only weapon he had, an old metal pipe. His hands trembled, but his eyes were steady. The door exploded inward, shards flying. 3 hunters stepped inside. Their tall forms moved with precision, their glowing red eyes fixed on Lyra. "Subject located," one of them said in a cold, mechanical voice. "Return immediately." Lyra gripped Ethan's arm tightly, whispering, Take me back, please. Don't let them." Ethan raised the pipe, his voice loud and firm. "You're not taking her anywhere." The hunters tilted their heads, almost curious. "Human interference detected, irrelevant. Remove obstacle." One stepped forward, reaching for Ethan. Ethan's heart hammered, but he remembered his preparations. Weeks of planning, scraps of old tech, and his determination had given him one advantage. Humans were resourceful. As the hunter reached out, Ethan slammed his communicator against the wall. Instantly, the room filled with static and bright sparks. The hunter's eyes flickered, their scanners momentarily disrupted. "Lyra, now!" Ethan shouted. She raised her hand, sending a wave of energy across the room. The lights burst and the hunters staggered back. Ethan grabbed Lyra's hand, pulling her through the hallway. "Move!" They sprinted down the stairs as the hunters recovered, their metallic voices echoing, "Do not let them escape." Cornered, they burst out into the night streets, neon lights painting the wet pavement. But the hunters were fast, too fast. Within moments, they were surrounded. 5 figures closed in, forming a circle. Their glowing eyes locked on Lyra. "Subject must return. Humans unworthy, weak, not permitted beyond homeworld," one of them declared. Ethan froze. "What did you just say?" The hunter's voice was flat, without emotion. "Her people observe. Humans not fit, fragile bodies, violent nature. No place among stars. Subject belongs to higher order, not this primitive species." Ethan's chest tightened with anger. So this was the truth? Lyra's people thought humanity was worthless. That's why she was alone, because she believed otherwise. He stepped forward, gripping the pipe tighter. "You think we're weak? That we don't deserve the stars? You have no idea what humans are capable of." The hunters ignored him, advancing on Lyra. Lyra's truth tears glimmered in Lyra's eyes as she faced them. "I left because they wrong. Humans, not weak. Humans strong. Here." She placed her hand on her chest, then pointed at Ethan. Proof." The hunters laughed, a harsh metallic sound. "Proof? One human cannot stand against us," Ethan smirked despite the fear burning inside him. "Maybe not with strength. But with brains? You'll see, the battle." The hunters lunged. Ethan swung the pipe, striking one across the head. It barely staggered, but the distraction gave Lyra time to release a surge of energy. One hunter's circuit sparked violently, collapsing to the ground. Another grabbed Ethan by the throat, lifting him off the ground. His vision blurred, his air cut off. "Remove obstacle," the hunter said coldly. "Ethan," Lyra cried. Her eyes glowed brighter than ever before. She raised both hands and a wave of pure energy exploded outward. The hunters staggered back, releasing Ethan. He fell to the ground, coughing but alive. Lyra stepped forward, her entire body glowing like a star. "No more," she said firmly, her voice no longer trembling. The hunters hesitated. For the first time they seemed unsure. Ethan struggled to his feet, wiping blood from his lip. He grinned weakly. "Told you, humans don't quit." The revelation as the last two hunters prepared to strike again, Lyra raised her hand high. A symbol appeared in the air, glowing with strange patterns. Her voice rang out clear. "I am not your subject, I am free, and I choose them." The hunters froze, their red eyes dimming. "You defy the council," one hissed. Lyra's expression hardened. "Yes, because the council is wrong. Humans are not weak. They fight even when hopeless. They protect even when afraid. They are worthy." Her power surged, sending a shockwave through the street. The hunters staggered, their forms breaking apart under the force. Within seconds, they dissolved into fragments of light, disappearing into the night. Silence followed. Ethan stared at her, his chest heaving. "Lyra, what was that?" She lowered her glowing hands, her strength fading. "My truth. My people's secret." She sank to her knees, exhausted. Ethan rushed to her side, catching her before she fell. Aftermath. The streets were empty again, as if nothing had happened. Only the faint scorch marks and broken lights remained. Ethan held Lyra gently. "You saved me. You saved both of us." She looked up at him weakly, but her eyes shone with determination. "Not over. Council will know. They will come." Ethan clenched his fists. "Then let them come. We'll be ready." Lyra blinked at him, surprised by his certainty. "You're not afraid?" "Of course I'm afraid," Ethan admitted with a small smile. "But fear doesn't stop humans. It never has." For a moment, silence hung between them, heavy yet filled with something new. Hope. Closing scene of Part 4. That night, back in the apartment, Ethan cleaned his wounds while Lyra rested. His body ached, but his spirit burned with fire. He had faced beings far stronger than himself, and somehow he and Lyra had won. Not because of power, but because of trust, determination, and human stubbornness. As he looked out the window at the endless stars above, he whispered, "If they think we're not ready for the galaxy, they're in for a surprise." Behind him, Lyra opened her eyes, her soft voice carrying across the room. "Together, we show them," Ethan smiled. For the first time, he felt not just like a man surviving in a crowded city, but like the beginning of something greater. The revelation was clear. Humans were not weak, and the galaxy was about to find out. The night after the battle felt different. The air was heavy with silence, but it wasn't peace. It was the quiet before another storm. Ethan knew it. Lyra knew it. The hunters had failed, but their masters, the council she spoke of, would not stop there. Ethan stood by the apartment window, staring at the glowing city. The streets below looked normal again. People walked, lights flickered, and drones hummed in the air. To anyone else, it was an ordinary night. But Ethan could still feel the echo of the fight, the strength of Lyra's energy, the cold voices of the hunters, and his own fear sharpened into courage. Lyra sat on the couch, her silver hair glowing faintly even in the dark. She was still weak from the surge she unleashed, but her eyes carried fire. "They know now," she said softly. "The council sees everything. They know I chose humanity." Ethan turned from the window and crossed the room. "Good, let them watch. They'll see who we are." Lyra gave a sad smile. "You, so bold. But they strong, Ethan, very strong. Whole fleets, whole armies, they can crush." Ethan shook his head. "Maybe, but they don't understand us. That's their mistake." The signal, the capsule in the corner, glowed again, this time brighter than ever. Strange symbols danced across its surface, and a faint hum filled the room. Lyra's face grew pale. "It is them. The council. They send warning." Ethan stepped closer, fists clenched. The capsule projected a shimmering figure into the air, a tall alien cloaked in light with eyes of cold fire. Its voice rang with authority. "Lyra of the council," it declared, "you have broken the code. You chose the unworthy. You revealed truths to primitives. Return at once or be erased." Ethan stepped forward, blocking the projection's view of Lyra. "Listen here, whoever you are. She's not your prisoner anymore. She's free, and we're not primitives." The figure's eyes narrowed. "Human. You mistake survival for strength. You swing metal pipes against hunters as if it matters. You are ants pretending to roar. Ethan smirked. Funny. I remember those ants beating your hunters tonight. The figure did not flinch. Your time will end. The fleet comes. She will be taken and Earth reminded of its place. The projection vanished. The capsule dimmed. Lyra's hands trembled. They come fast. We must run. But Ethan shook his head. No, running only proves them right. If they're bringing their fleet, then we'll answer in our way. Humanity's way. Preparing for the inevitable, Ethan wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a scientist. He wasn't even someone with connections to leaders or armies. But he was human. And humans never waited for fate to crush them. They pushed back. The next morning, he began gathering what he needed. Old transmitters from junkyards, battery cells from discarded drones, scraps of metal and wiring from factories. Lyra watched him work, her confusion slowly turning into understanding. You make weapon? She asked. Not exactly, Ethan said with a grin. Something better. A message. Over days, Ethan built a strange machine. With Lyra's knowledge and his stubborn creativity, they turned scraps into something powerful. It wasn't sleek like alien tech. It was clunky, patched with tape and bolts, humming with unstable energy. But it worked. It was a beacon, strong enough to broadcast far beyond Earth. Lyra tilted her head, puzzled. You send message. To Council? Ethan shook his head. No, to humanity. If they're coming for us, everyone deserves to know. We won't hide. We'll face them together. Lyra's eyes widened. Together. The first fleet arrives. They didn't have to wait long. 1 week later, the night sky lit up with streaks of fire. People pointed at the heavens as massive shapes descended through the atmosphere. Sleek silver ships, dozens of them, spread out across the sky. Panic swept the city. News feeds exploded with reports. Governments scrambled, but their weapons looked like toys compared to the alien fleet. Ethan stood on the rooftop with Lyra, staring at the ships. His heart pounded, but he forced himself to stay calm. They're here. Lyra nodded grimly. Council shows power. They want fear first, and fear they created. Entire cities fell silent, streets empty as people hid indoors. The Council ships hovered like gods, unmoving yet terrifying. Then came the broadcast. Across every screen, every device, the same alien figure appeared. Humans, it declared, you are fragile. You are violent. You are unworthy of the stars. Return to your small lives and forget what you saw. Resist and you will be erased, the world trembled. But Ethan smiled. This was the moment he built the beacon for. Humanity's answer. He switched on the beacon. A loud hum filled the air as the device powered up. Lyra placed her hand on it, steadying the unstable energy. Together, they aimed the signal skyward, and then Ethan spoke. His voice, carried by the beacon, echoed across every device on Earth. My name is Ethan Cross, he said firmly. I'm just an ordinary man. But I've seen the truth. These aliens think we're weak. They think we don't belong among the stars. They're wrong. He paused, his voice steady and clear. We may not have fleets. We may not have advanced weapons. But we have something they'll never understand, our will. We fight for each other. We protect what matters, and when we're told to kneel, we stand taller. Lyra watched him, her eyes shining. Ethan leaned closer to the beacon. So hear me, Council. If you think you can scare us into silence, you've already lost. Because humanity doesn't break. Humanity answers. The beacon roared, blasting the message into every screen on Earth and into the skies above. Billions of humans heard his words, and something changed. Fear turned to fire. Streets filled again, not with panic, but with determination. People raised their voices, shouting the same word. Humanity. For the first time, the Council saw Earth not as a collection of fragile individuals, but as one united force. The stand. The alien fleet reacted quickly. Ships descended lower, preparing to strike. But Earth's skies lit up with resistance. Fighter jets scrambled, missiles fired, defense systems activated. They weren't as advanced, but they fought fiercely. Ethan and Lyra watched from the rooftop. Explosions painted the sky, human planes darting bravely against overwhelming odds. They fight, Lyra whispered, amazed. Even when hopeless. That's humanity, Ethan said with pride. The Council underestimated the spirit of humans. For every ship that attacked, humans responded with clever tricks, using terrain, using weather, using sheer numbers. They didn't win every exchange, but they refused to stop. And then Lyra stepped forward. Her hands glowed again. I helped them. She raised her arms, sending arcs of energy into the sky. Shields formed around fighter squadrons. Alien weapons misfired under her interference. Human pilots, saved from destruction, cheered as they pressed on. The battle raged across the night. Earth's people and one alien girl standing side by side. The turning point. Ethan knew they couldn't destroy the whole fleet, but they didn't have to. They only had to prove the Council wrong. He grabbed the beacon again and shouted into it, his voice raw. "Council, look at us. You call us weak, but we're still standing. You send fleets and we fight back. You say we don't deserve the stars. Well, we're coming anyway." His words carried not just to Earth, but to the alien ships themselves. The crews hesitated. The Council, watching from afar, heard the roar of billions united, and for the first time they faltered. Lyra smiled through her exhaustion. "They doubt now. You show them." Victory in spirit by dawn, the alien fleet began to withdraw, not because they were defeated in battle, but because they had been defeated in spirit. Their display of power had failed. Humanity hadn't bowed. Humanity had risen. The skies cleared, leaving trails of smoke and fire, but Earth still stood. Ethan sank to his knees, exhausted, as Lyra helped him up. Around them, people cheered in the streets, shouting his words again and again. "Humanity answers." Lyra looked at him with shining eyes. "You did it. You showed them who humans are." Ethan shook his head with a tired smile. "No, we all did. Every single one of us." Closing scene. Weeks later, the world had changed. People no longer spoke of aliens with only fear, but with pride that they had stood tall. Humanity had found its voice among the stars. Ethan and Lyra stood together on the same rooftop, staring at the horizon. "Think they'll come back?" Ethan asked. Lyra nodded softly. "Yes, Council never forgets. But they never forget fear either. Now they fear you." Ethan smirked. "Good, then we'll be ready. Because humanity doesn't hide. Humanity answers." Lyra slipped her hand into his, smiling. Together, the sun rose, painting the sky in gold. For the first time, Ethan didn't just see the city or the world below. He saw the future, one where humans walked proudly among the stars. And he knew no matter what came, humanity's answer would echo forever.